another comment that we came across from you, or another perspective that you have, is that you've argued that data have become a primary means of production, your words, and that just as labor and capital eventually gained unions and community banks, you argue that communities will need their own data unions to counterbalance corporate concentration. I had never heard of an idea like this. Do you want to tell us more about it?
Mm. Well, so first of all, it's pretty clear that data is a means of production, and I will cite sort of the loudest voice in the world, Xi Jinping, who's the head of China, right? Who says this? He says, so that's really weird. Here's this guy who's Marxist. That means that his whole theory is around capital and labor, right? And he's saying, no, 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 no. It's no longer capital and labor. It's capital, labor, and data. And if you control the data, then you can manipulate the other two. So that's what the head of China is saying, not just me. He apparently did get it from me, but that's okay, right? Happy to give away ideas. Um, and so what, and of course, that's where all the hyperscalers come from too, right? It's all like huge concentrations of data. And then you ask, well, so what happens to people like me or you? Well, we're sort of at the mercy of all these people who know a lot of stuff about us. We don't know what they know about us. And they're trying to get us to buy things, right? It's one of the reasons that personal agents are interesting because personal agents don't have to share data to get results. They can look at what's out there. They can ask specific questions, but they don't have to tell you, oh, I'm a male this age, I make this much money. It can sort of be a lot more sort of private inquiry sort of model. So that's actually really interesting that it's a chance to sort of take back your data. The reason the loyalagents.org thing is with Consumer Reports is because when you get a group of people who are using their data to figure out what things are scams and what things are a good deal and what works and what doesn't work, then you have the power to be able to begin to compete with fairly big people like Walmart, right? Who know a lot about you, but now you know more about you than they do. And by sharing among the community, the cooperative, you can operationalize that to get better prices, avoid scams, all sorts of things. This is not a new idea at all. So in the mid 1800s, the only sort of banks in this country were in New York City and Boston and Philadelphia. And all the people who lived to the west were getting killed because they had no financial access uh, except on exorbitant terms. And so all these agricultural communities started agricultural banks, cooperatives, and broke the monopoly of the Eastern banks. It was something that looked impossible. But by pooling their resources, they were able to do this. Those same co-ops, incidentally, are the ones that electrified America. You hear about government initiatives to, put in electricity and stuff like that. But the majority of our electric grid came from communities building their own bloody grid, right? Because the government wasn't doing it and they didn't want some company to own their electricity. So they built their own, right? And it's where we have credit unions today. That's where they've sort of evolved. After a while, the laborers noticed that this was happening and said, well, gosh, we're going to have our own unions. And these were unions of labor. And famously, this in the sort of beginning of the 1900s. And eventually, people changed the laws and said, no, you can't require kids to work and you can't require people to work more than a certain number of hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's this battle that happens between these means of production and that's what Marx was about. But now we have the battle with data. And I think the same solutions that worked with capital and with labor will also work with data. And I said, this sort of AI agents type of thing where you get to not share your data, but just share questions and answers. If you gather people together into a co op, you can have something that's much more powerful than you alone can ever be.